Hello, everybody, and welcome to Four Star Chicago Sports. This is the Barely There podcast. I'm your host today. My name is Kyle Duplessis. We are joined again by special guest Alex Pat. Alex, we got a lot to talk about with this recent Bears disappointment to the Minnesota Vikings on Monday night. We'll get a little bit of preview of Detroit going into week 2. But first, let's introduce the show here, guys.
Windy City banners rocking 4 stars aligned. Dynasty dreams rise, Bulls in their prime. Cubs curse shattered, the victory divine. Fields be running, clock ticking on my timeline. Shot down heroes, legends never fade. Black Hawks flying, cutting ice with the blade. White Sox diamonds, the South Side parade. 4 stars shine bright, legacies they made. Mike with the crown, air rain, no dispute. Sweetness in the backfield, Walter in pursuit. Bear down Sunday's midfield, battles cute. Chicago.
Welcome back to Four Star Chicago Sports, everybody. Once again, I am Kyle Duplessis. I'll be your host today. I do believe that Sean and Jason are going to try to make an appearance at some point in this show. But for right now, it's me and special guest Alex Pat. Alex, glad to have you back on the show here. I don't think you've done the Cub shows. Have you ever done a Bear show with us before?
No, this is my first Bears show with you guys.
Nice. How you doing today, Alex?
Well, I'm doing okay. I wish we had better things to talk about tonight, obviously. Still a lot of things on my mind, but hey, the weather is good, and Anthony Rizzo is being retired on Saturday. I'm going to be there with my dad. It's going to be great. So there are good things around outside of the Bears, obviously.
Yeah, I was really happy to see that they let him come back for to retire as a Chicago Cub. He is honestly, if not my favorite, for sure, top 3 Cubs of all time. I mean, so
Same.
crucial to the 2016 World Series. And he's just a very likable guy, man. It's not even about how good he was. He just seems like a guy's guy. I would love to sit down at a bar and have a beer with Anthony Rizzo.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you remember everything that he's done with cancer now and in the past with his foundation, which I like to follow. And he's going to keep doing that, and he's going to be an ambassador for the team. And I think he's the ideal guy to have as an ambassador. So that's really, really exciting because, we wondered all year, would Anthony Rizzo play again? And I think after a while it became more and more obvious that his career was over, and it's not a bad thing. It's just, father time always wins. He had a number of injuries late in his career, but he had a hell of a career. He's going to be a shining star in the Cubs Hall of Fame and a shining star in the Hall of Very Good for baseball.
Yes. Real quick, I want to say what's up, everybody in the chat here. We got John in the chat. Breaking news, Bruce, as always. Elizabeth is here. V-Dog's here. James, thanks for joining us, guys. Really appreciate you. Please hit that like button if you haven't already. And once again, guys, I'd like to welcome in special guest Alex Pat to the show. Good friend of 4 Star Chicago Sports. First and foremost, Alex, I really appreciate you filling in tonight because if it wasn't for you, I'd be sitting here talking about myself, and I know these guys don't want to hear that. So first, why don't you tell everybody where they could find you, Alex?
Yeah, so if you want to find me on Twitter X, you could look at iShyFanPat2. If you want to find me some of the work I do, Shy City Sports, I write a little Blackhawks. I write a lot for Cubby's Crib, Fansided. Also, my personal website's got my art and media works, alexanderjpatcreative.com. So you can find me in any of those platforms.
Yeah, and you guys, honestly, if you haven't already, please follow Alex. He puts a lot of good work out there. He knows his stuff, very intellectual. Alex, first and foremost, let me just get your vibe, your emotions after the game on Monday night, because this, to me, as much as we've been expecting different, it felt very much of the same.
Oh yeah, I mean, it felt like no different before. I mean, all I could say to myself was same old Bears, same old Bears, same old Bears. I mean, if you look at the check boxes for, quote, same old Bears over the past few years, you would say, hey, blown lead, seen that before. Dumb penalties, seen those before. Erratic quarterback play, seen that for eternity. Questionable coaching decisions, seen that for an eternity. Even like the weird challenge, we saw that under Eberflus all the time. Oh, and also another loss against an NFC North team. And I tweeted this out. Let me pull up what the stat I tweeted. It's pretty damning. I'm going to pull it up now. But I did this yesterday. I looked and I did some of the math, just in case you didn't know this. But here you go. So Lovie Smith was gone after the 2012 season. Since Lovie Smith left, the Bears are 22-51 against the NFC North. That's a .301 winning percentage against your own division with an over-decade sample size. And 13 of those 22 wins, more than half of them, were when Matt Nagy was your coach. So think about the accumulation of Mark Trestman, John Fox, Matt Eberflus, and now you're 0-1 with Ben Johnson against the NFC North. It's insane. I mean, you've won multiple home games in a season against an NFC North team 3 times since 2013. I don't know how many other teams in football have a record like that against their own division. I mean, the Browns are the only one that I could maybe think of, and I don't know the Jaguars, but outside that, the Bears might be the worst team in football against their own division over the past decade plus. It's insanity, and we saw it again Monday night. Another promising game starting off. You scored for the first time on an opening drive in over a year, which is crazy. But you were there, you felt the energy, and it's that all too familiar feeling of deflation. It was same old Bears.
Yeah, I'm telling you, once the Bears, they called that kind of phantom holding call on Darnell Wright, and they got pushed back 10 yards, and Cairo Santos missed that field goal. You could feel the energy in the stadium just deflate. I mean, it felt like there was honestly probably people leaving the stadium because it felt like the same old Chicago Bears again. Here we go. And it's funny that you bring up that statistic because I was scrolling through Instagram after the game. And I forgot exactly what the statistic was, but it said somewhere basically that the Bears since 2021 have the most losses in the NFL with going into the fourth quarter with a lead. And of course, Monday night was no exception. It's just depressing because even when the Bears were kind of like a mid-tier team, we'd always kind of look down on Detroit and be like, well, at least we're not them. But it seems like the Bears have kind of become the laughing stock of this division in recent years, does it not?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, they're way at the bottom. I mean, remember last year, you were 5-win team and everyone else was in double digits.
Yep. Yeah, and it's like the charter franchise should be the ones setting the standards here, but we're basically, like I said, the laughing stock of this division. I mean, at this point, over the last 3 seasons, I think teams like the Packers, Vikings, and Lions love to play the Bears twice a year.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, exactly. They circle us on their
yeah, I mean,
calendars.
and obviously people make the mistake of saying we lost to a rookie quarterback. We know JJ McCarthy's not a rookie quarterback. He's going to his second season, although he didn't play a single game his rookie year due to that massive injury. But in the second half, he looked more poised than any Chicago Bear on the field, and that's concerning. So getting into this game, Alex, we talked about this a little bit in the studio coming in here. If you look at the box score in totality, you would think that the Chicago Bears won this game because outside of penalties, they basically dominated every single statistic in this game. Outside, I think rushing yards, I think the Vikings had one more rushing yard than they did. But for the most part, the Chicago Bears were the better team on the field on Monday. So first, how much of this loss would you attribute to Caleb Williams? How much to Ben Johnson, the defense, the offensive line, so on and so forth? First, let's start with Ben Johnson. What do you think of his debut as Chicago Bears head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were definitely things that he definitely regrets that didn't go so well. I think that you saw a very, I guess, conservative at times approach. And, whether that's justified or not, if you trust Caleb right now with the way he was looking, but you kept running with DeAndre Swift and you didn't give Kyle Monangai many chances to run. And I just thought that was a little weird, especially the way you talked him up. I was wondering where Colson Loveland was. I was wondering where Cole Kmet was. You were hoping to see a little more of those, especially against that defense that the Vikings have. And, the one thing I guess there are 2 things that stand out. One was going for it and not kicking the field goal earlier. That one doesn't bother me as much. I mean, Caleb should have made that throw straight up. That should have been a first down. And, maybe that is you putting your trust in your quarterback right off the bat. And maybe that's what he thought was right. So that one I'm not as upset about. Obviously, the challenge was not good. He was getting advice not to do it. I think Ben Johnson was a little amped up. It was his first game as an NFL head coach. It was Monday Night Football. The place was rocking. It felt like a playoff game. There was a lot of emotion in that game. I think he might have just been a little jumpy. And I think he looks back and realizes that he should not have made that challenge. And then also, too, with Cairo Santos needing to kick it out of bounds. So not kicking it in play because he doesn't have the leg to do it right now. And that didn't give you any time to potentially get the ball back and drive down the field. So it was not a spectacular game by Ben Johnson. And he, like, unlike other Bears coaches, admitted it. He admitted it that he did not do a very, very good job with some of those things. He realizes it. I do think that he will learn from some of this. I am going to give him the benefit of the doubt on a number of these things. First time head coach, mistakes tend to happen. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that. But there were definitely decisions that were noteworthy in that game.
Yeah, the one that was really concerning to me, and we talked about this a little bit, is, we were in the stands at the game, and I looked over at Sean and Brandon and Jason, and I said to them, I'm like, hey, listen, we know Cairo Santos has always been scrutinized for not having that big of a leg, especially if you compare him to the rest of the NFL. There's no way this guy is kicking the ball out of the back of the end zone. Right. If the Bears want to save the 2 seconds on the clock and get the 2 timeouts, if you include the 2-minute warning, they have to just kick this ball out of bounds, take the penalty, and let the Vikings start at the 40-yard line, because either way, you have to stop them. So it doesn't matter. Right. At this point, they're not going to kick a field goal from the 50, or the 51 if they don't get a first down. So at this point, it doesn't matter how many yards they get, as long as they don't get a first down. I just don't see the benefit of kicking it out, trying to kick it out of the back of the end zone as opposed to kicking out of bounds. I just don't think there was any cons. I don't think Santos has a very strong leg. I don't think he's capable of getting out of the back of the end zone unless the wind's at his back. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. So when Ben Johnson made that decision, it absolutely crushed me. I looked over at Sean. I said, well, now this game is officially over. I mean, right. The fact that you just lost, the Bears are going to get the ball back with 13 seconds left or something like that. It would have to be a miracle in order for them to win this game. And we just knew that wasn't going to happen. But yeah, I agree with you on the 4th down call. It's so easy to scrutinize or evaluate something after it's done. Everybody's all over Ben Johnson on Twitter, on Instagram, calling him out for going for it on 4th and 2 or 4th and 3. I understand that the Bears are in a position right now where they don't know much about this team. They're kind of learning as they go here, and you shouldn't trust them to score a ton of points. So you want to get points, as many points as you can when you can get them. But the play that he called looked good, right, Alex? I mean, Caleb missed the throw, guys. I mean, DJ Moore was wide.
Yep.
Not only would it have been a first down, but there's potential that could have been a touchdown. Obviously, it's tough to see when you're in the stands. You don't get all the views like you do on television.
Right.
But it looked like if DJ Moore made that catch, there was a lot of green grass in the way in front of him. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm not mad at him at all about that. And I think you're right. I think part of the reason he did that was to make a statement like, hey, we trust in Caleb. We think he can make this throw, and we're gonna pounce on the Vikings, not give them a chance to get back in this game. I think at that point it was 7-3 in the second quarter. 14-3 is a much different game. I liked the move that Ben Johnson made. Caleb just has to execute. And we've heard Caleb talk about this time and time again. It's not about Ben Johnson's play calling. It's not about this, it's not about that. It's about executing the plays on the field and taking what the defense gives you. Since we're talking about Caleb Williams here, Alex, I want to know your overall assessment of Caleb and how he played on Monday night.
Disappointing. Yep. And, obviously he started 9 for 9, 10 for 10, whatever it is. And I do feel like you saw some good things from Caleb Williams. I mean, first of all, some of those sacks that he avoided, spectacular. And the throw to Roma Dunze on the first drive, spectacular. Like, those were really, really well done. And, people have been breaking down film and tape and identifying things. And, they're obviously growing pains with Caleb Williams, especially in a new system. That's all understandable. But some of those throws you just straight up have to make. And I feel like he was skittish. And the footwork at times was just not very good. And, somebody pointed out, it's like, he sprawls a little bit. He's looking in one direction, then he quickly tries to adjust and throw in another direction, and the feet aren't planted correctly, and the ball's 100-mile-an-hour fastball over Moore's head or Komet's head or DJ, whoever it is, So that accuracy issue has to be better. And, people were asking early on saying, hey, why aren't we throwing downfield more? It's like, well, you got to be able to throw downfield, unfortunately. You can dink and dunk to an extent, but you can't always rely on dinking and dunking, especially if your offensive line, which I don't think is awful, and I think that it was better in some areas, while other areas it still wasn't. It's not an elite offensive line. you don't have an in prime Lions offensive line or an in prime Cowboys offensive line. So you can dink and dunk on a number of plays, but eventually you're going to have to make the big plays down the middle or down the field.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the offensive line a little bit here because Sean of Chicago or four-star Chicago sports very own, he's said numerous times that he was concerned about the Jonah Jackson signing. He didn't like it when they made it. He didn't like the money he gave him. And you guys, I don't know if you watched the same game I did, but Jonah Jackson did not look very good Monday night against the Vikings. It
No.
looks like they're kind of in the same place they were with Nate Davis here at right guard. They certainly did not fix the issue. Now, maybe like you said, Alex, there's definitely going to be growing pains with all learning a new offense. They're trying to become a more cohesive unit, starting to learn each other's habits. So that should get better as the season goes on. But that was not a good start for Jonah Jackson and his Bears tenure. I want to ask you a question, Alex. It seems like the more we see of Caleb Williams, the more we start to understand the floor, right? Like we start to understand what he's capable of, what he's not capable of. At times he looks like an absolute superstar in the NFL. There's other times where you're kind of scratching your head and you're like, well, that's not the Caleb Williams I saw the first quarter. Who's this guy? But how are you feeling about Caleb Williams' ceiling going into this, I guess, the 2025 season, now that we had over a full season to assess Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I just I'm not trying to go off the deep end, but it's a little concerning when I see other quarterbacks thrive pretty quickly. And there's a lot of growing pains with Caleb, obviously. But it just, at the end of the day, it's that deep ball. It has to be better. And I'm hoping that this coaching staff can fix that, because then, like I said, you're not going to succeed. I don't know if I'm confident that he'll be a superstar at this point. Do I think he'll be better than pretty much all other Bears quarterbacks? Yeah, sure. I mean, even last year, statistically, he had probably a top 10 Bears quarterback season in the history of the team. And he was by far the best rookie quarterback statistically. But again, stats don't always tell the full story, because a lot of times last year you got down early because you couldn't do anything. And then you scored a bunch of points late, whether that was fighting back or just scoring in garbage time. But I mean, at least I could say that Caleb in like 2-minute drill settings has looked much better than most other quarterbacks have looked. So you hope there's a little bit there. I just want to be confident that he can be accurate with intermediate and deep throws, because that is such an important thing. And yeah, it's one thing to go on a script and succeed like we saw, but you got to go off script and succeed as well. And, is he able to succeed against zone defenses? We want to see that. We want to see him being able to hit guys on the move. And, he hit his checkdowns, but, there are times when there's a deep threat and you can't see everybody. I mean, I know it's easy to screen cap something and be like, oh, you're not going to see everybody on the field. I think, Fitzmagic even made that point online today, but you want to see better vision in certain situations that you just haven't seen yet.
Yeah, there's certainly room to grow for Caleb Williams. I've talked to people all day about or since Monday, about how every quarterback in the NFL misses throws, especially if the timing of the offense is upset. And let's face it, the Bears' offensive line was not brilliant by any means necessary on Monday. He definitely was running more than he probably would like to, and he was making good plays. I mean, in the first quarter, first half, he was making the right reads. He was getting out of the pocket when he needed to, continuing to look downfield, running when he needed to. He looked good as a runner. But yeah, I mean, it seems like we just continue to see the same mistakes, especially with accuracy when it comes to Caleb Williams. I'm hoping it's something that could be coached out of him, but the longer this progresses, the more concerned you get about him being what people have said is a generational talent, or a guy who could win multiple Super Bowls. And I'm glad you brought up the fact that he probably had one of the best seasons in Chicago Bears history, because, people keep saying to me, I had a guy at the bar the other day, he asked me, should I sell my Caleb Williams cards? I feel like you know a lot about football. Should I sell my cards? I'm like, well, listen, if Caleb Williams is the best quarterback that ever played for the Chicago Bears, your cards are still going to be worth money, but that doesn't mean that he's a great quarterback by any means necessary, because
the bar is low.
Yeah, like the standards have not been set very high here in Chicago. If he throws for 4,100 yards and 33 touchdowns, he is by definition the best Chicago Bears quarterback of all time. But those are pretty much the standards in the NFL nowadays, don't you think? 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns. That's where most of the good quarterbacks end up, right?
Yeah.
And in all fairness, there's probably only, in my opinion, and maybe you could disagree, Alex, but 3 or 4 great generational type quarterbacks in the NFL right now. When you talk about guys like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, I don't think Caleb has to be that, but he certainly has to be better than the Caleb Williams we've watched over the last year and a game.
Yes. Yes. I mean, even if you put him in the tier of, and again, I'm not comparing him to Jared Goff, but in that type of tier where you're like, okay, you're not Pat Mahomes, you're not Joe Burrow, you're not Josh Allen, you're not Lamar Jackson, but in that tier of, and again, we're not counting playoff wins or whatever, just that talent tier. If like, hey, you're in the discussions with, Jared Goff and Jalen Hurts and Matt Stafford and those kind of guys, Brock Purdy, you would take that. I would definitely think. Obviously, we would love him to be Patrick Mahomes, but asking anybody to be Patrick Mahomes is just unrealistic. The closest thing I think you're going to get to Patrick Mahomes is Burrow or Josh Allen.
Yeah, I think the guys that have basically already established themselves as great ones are probably the only great quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Obviously, a lot remains to be seen about guys like Michael Penix and Jaden Daniels and Drake May, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams. But usually when you have a generational type talent, you can tell pretty quickly that he's special and he's meant for this game. It sucks that we're still sitting here as Bears fans asking these questions about Caleb Williams, but I will say, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not in panic mode, guys. I think Caleb Williams is still going to be the best Bears quarterback all time, and I think he's capable of winning Super Bowl. But certainly, every game I watch, the conversation of generational starts to become further and further away. Alex, how would you assess the offensive line play on Monday night? Because we all know that Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson put a lot of resources into rebuilding this offensive line in the offseason. They drafted a couple offensive linemen. They traded for Jonah Jackson and Joe Tooney. They added Drew Dahlman at center. But, we've been told time and time again that this is going to be the best offensive line we've seen here in a long time, but they did not look really all that remarkable on Monday.
No, I mean, one of the big problems for me was the penalties, the false starts. I mean, that just simply can't happen. And considering the fact that it's not like you drafted a bunch of rookies, guess what? You brought in a bunch of veterans too. I mean, Drew Dahlman is a veteran. Jonah Jackson, who did not have a good night, is a veteran. These are issues. Now, Darnell Wright, obviously, he had that one penalty, that holding that was complete garbage. I don't put that on him, but the false starts are really, really rough. And that just, that's driving Ben Johnson absolutely bonkers. I mean, you could say that Wright was good out there. Joe Tooney, you didn't hear Joe Tooney's name, which is usually a good thing.
Yeah.
Right. When it comes to offensive line play, if you're not being talked about, that's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, the line, was it the worst we've seen? Goodness, no. But it wasn't spectacular. And if you can at least clean up the penalties, then that's a big step forward alone, because some of those penalties just absolutely killed drives. Absolutely killed them.
Yeah, and we've talked about on this show numerous times now that not only are the Bears good enough to overcome a ton of penalties, but this is a team who in the offseason just talked over and over and over again about eliminating negative plays, keeping yourselves out of bad situations.
Right.
And I felt like time and time again on Monday, the Bears would get into a 2nd and 5 situation. All of a sudden it's 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 15. Like, the Chicago Bears are not a good enough roster to overcome these types of penalties, especially when you're talking about 127 yards. But I'm glad you brought the officiating up and you brought up the penalties, because we talked about this in the studio before we came on here. Alex, in no way, shape, or form am I ever going to be one of those guys who blames the officiating for a loss, because if you're a good enough team, you should be able to overcome bad calls. There's at least one bad call in every single sports game, whether it be basketball, football, baseball. We've seen it 1,000 times over. But do you feel like a couple of the calls in this game were a little bit phantom calls? And so, I mean, and they kind of calls that changed the trajectory of the game in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There were definitely some big calls. I mentioned the one with Darnell Wright, the holding, the pass interference call where Justin Jefferson basically just tripped, and that there was a touchdown the next play. That was a really, really big play. And, the other thing that was frustrating too was whether or not it was justified. You had the first pass interference of the game. on a very underthrown ball from JJ McCarthy. It's like, okay, it was somewhat of a ticky tacky call, but it probably was going to get called. You just never see that. But yes, there were definitely some questionable calls, but the way I looked at those calls is you got to overcome those. They were
Yeah,
definitely big. They were significant. The one killed your drive to push you back. That was a drive where you could have put the game away, but you got to overcome that because then you had another penalty where it moved you further back, and then Cairo Santos missed a 50-yard field goal. So that's on you.
yeah, yeah, and the phantom holding call, as everybody's calling it on social media, I think was absolutely ridiculous. Darnell Wright, I saw a statistic today that Darnell Wright was one of only like 10 players in the NFL who did not allow pressure on his quarterback. So
Yeah.
I think overall Darnell Wright had a very good game. And unfortunately, all you're going to hear about him in the news is that holding call. That's all you're going to hear. Because like you
Right.
said, Alex, offensive linemen aren't talked about very much when it comes to analyzing football or ESPN or any of these big time networks. But the concerning thing for the Chicago Bears was the play of both Drew Dahlman and Jonah Tooney. I mean, these guys are the guys, like you said, Alex. These aren't rookies that they drafted to expect growing pains. These are guys they chose in free agency and thought could come here and make an immediate impact. This offensive line was certainly better than in years past, especially 2024. But they didn't look like one of the best offensive lines in football. Like ESPN ranked them number 3 overall at the interior of the offensive line. As a matter of fact, I can make an argument that Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright probably had the best games of any of the Chicago Bears offensive linemen outside of Joe Tooney. And Joe Tooney is always going to be Mr. Consistent, right? Like
Yeah.
you just expect Joe Tooney to go out there and do his job. But man, unless these guys get better as the more unified they become, the start of the season with Jonah Jackson and Drew Dahlman is certainly concerning as a Bears fan.
Yeah, yeah. Good question here from V Dog. How much is the inconsistent O line play is experience far as reps? Because outside of the last preseason game, it's their first time playing together as a starting unit. Give it time. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think there's going to be some growing pains with the new offensive system. There might be some motions where you jump, there could be things where you get yourself in a little bit of trouble. And, that can happen. I just think that there are some fundamental penalties that you just simply cannot make. And for a lot of these guys that are veterans, you just can't jump early on certain plays. And, the other thing with Jonah Jackson, too, is there were a lot of things that checked like a box. Like, okay, he played for Ben Johnson in Detroit. He was a Pro Bowler. He also, he hit that peak a few years ago. So I don't really know how much juice he has left. And for a guy like Drew Dahlman, you don't expect anything spectacular, but you expect competent and solidified. And he didn't have the greatest game. He did not have the greatest game. Was it as bad as some of the centers we've seen in years past? No, but it wasn't great, and you hope for a little better there. And maybe a game under their belt that helps them out a little more. They understand better what they have to do, the mistakes they made as individuals, as a unit. So you want to clean some of that stuff up. And I'm sure that Ben Johnson is going to be going very, very hard on that stuff this week at House Hall.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think they'll ever be as high as ESPN had them as like the third best interior offensive line in the NFL. But I do expect them to get better as this season goes on. I think that this unit, they didn't play a lot together in the offseason. I think it's more just a matter of cohesiveness and unity, and these guys just get to know one another. Real quick, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but Alex, we talked a lot in the offseason, and a lot of Bears fans have made it very vocal on social media that they're not a big fan of Cairo Santos because at today's day and age in the NFL, it seems like almost every kicker is kicking 55, 60-yard field goals regularly. Cairo Santos definitely, without a doubt, has one of the weakest legs in the NFL. He is a very accurate kicker, but when you're talking about 50, 55, 60, it's basically out of the question. We saw times last year where the Bears refused to kick a field goal and decided to punt because they didn't have a lot of trust in Cairo Santos. They brought Jonathan Kim in the offseason. It seemed like there was a real competition going on between them, but then after that, I think it was preseason week 2, they decided to part ways with Jonathan Kim. Do you think that kicker is somewhere the Bears should be looking to upgrade at, and maybe this middle of this season or at least the next offseason?
As a big Cairo Santos fan, I do think you're at the end of the road here. I mean, we've seen the fact that his leg hasn't been that strong the past few years. It's been kind of costly. So, yeah, I'll always appreciate what he did. I mean, remember that streak that he had. and you remember how accurate he was for a long. He never had the strongest leg, but it just seems like it's deteriorating more and more. And if you can't kick 50 in this league now, I mean, to the point some of the commenters on this video are making, a 50-yard field goal isn't what it used to be. It isn't the wow that a 50-yard is all you could say is pretty routine these days for NFL kickers. It's kind of like watching baseball where throwing 100 miles an hour used to be a big deal. Now it's like, well, a lot of guys do it. And now you have a lot of guys drilling 55, 56, 57. Like a 60-yard field goal these days isn't what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, the NFL is truly a game of inches. I think it's the most
Yes.
competitive sports league in all professional sports. You have to take and find every advantage you possibly can. If every other team in the NFL is able to kick 55, 60-yard field goals and you can't, you're going to end up losing games because of that. I love Cairo Santos. I love him beating the Packers in Green Bay at the end of last season. I think one of my favorite moments in recent Bears history. But I agree with you 100%, Alex. Like as a person, great guy, but if he's not capable of kicking 50-yard field goals and everybody else in the NFL is, if the world, if the game is changing, you got to change with it. You have to stay in front of these curves. And to me, it seems like that conversation, that decision has basically been made for the Bears. I mean, if he makes that 50-yard field goal on Monday night, we're talking about a completely different game. The game would have been tied with 2 minutes left, and it's just disheartening because this is something we talked about in the offseason. We knew that this could creep up and be a problem for the Chicago Bears, and here we are talking about it after week one. I want to talk about some of the rookies here real quick, Alex, because I thought for sure drafting a guy number 10 in the NFL draft at a skill position, we would see a lot more of him in this game. And that goes with Luther Burden as well at number 39 in the second round. You mentioned earlier that Kyle Monangai didn't get much play. They continue to run DeAndre Swift in the tackles. That didn't work last season. It's not working this season. What would you have liked to see Ben Johnson do differently with the rookies in week one?
Yeah, I think he should have used Colson Loveland a little more. I would have run it with Kyle Monangai a little more. Those are the big things. And I'd like to see them get Luther Burden going. And I'd like to see a little more of that yards after the catch work because let's face it, some of those screens did not work. And I think you did have an opportunity with Luther Burden to do that, and you just didn't. So I would like to see a little more of that. I think that when looking at the offensive dynamic and you say, hey, you could create a mismatch with two tight end sets, that includes having, obviously Colson Loveland in there. That's what I want to see more of going forward.
Yeah, and I don't think it's in any way, shape, or form Colson Loveland's fault that he didn't have a great game, guys. I don't think he was a huge part of the game plan because both
No.
Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet had remarkable catches in that game, and they bailed Caleb Williams out more than a couple times. I agree with you 100%. You drafted these guys for a reason. You chose Colston Loveland over guys like Josh Simmons. You could have solidified that left tackle position. You decided that you needed this tight end. And here we are in week one after this great preseason, this great training camp, and we hardly see any of them. And if a guy like Luther Burden is what he is advertised to be, this guy who can make plays in open space, then get him the ball in open space and let's see what he's capable of. I mean, at this point, what do the Bears have to lose? They're not going to be a Super Bowl contending team. You might as well see what you got on the bench right now while you have time. And I think the Kyle Monangai could have changed the trajectory of the game a little bit because it was obvious that DeAndre Swift was not weakening that defensive line in any way, shape, or form. He wasn't beating them up. He wasn't tiring them out.
And he's not going to do that. That's
No.
not the type of back that he is.
Yeah, and there's something I want to ask you just for my own personal thoughts here, man. I feel like the Bears have been trying to complete a screen pass for the last 30 years. Like,
It doesn't work.
What is it about? Why can every other team in the NFL figure this out, but the Chicago Bears can't? Is Caleb Williams throwing the ball too early, too late, like not letting his blockers get in front of the receiver? What's going on that the Bears can't complete a simple screen pass in 2025 in the NFL?
It seems like it's always so slow. Like it's slow developing. Like they're able to easily read what's going on because they don't execute it quick enough. It looks like they're doing it a step slower. You
Yeah,
know,
like it's weird because even you watch teams like the Browns, you watch teams like the Giants. These aren't good football teams, guys. But these football 101 plays that they run, they get them right every time. And somehow the Chicago Bears, in the span of 30 years, can't figure out how to run a simple screen pass. Like that's pathetic. This is stuff that you learn when you're in Pee Wee football. How the Bears can't pull this off is mind boggling to me. And I also agree with you, Alex, that if you trust Caleb Williams and you want to be a different team you've been in the past, and you want to send a message to the rest of the NFL, at some point the Bears are going to have to be more consistent with throwing the ball downfield, right? Like these screens aren't going to win you
yes.
football games. Like if you're trying to give Caleb a layup early in the game, earlier in the second half to get his confidence up, I get it. But when you're talking about marching down the field on the first drive of the game and scoring a touchdown, and then on the third, fourth drive of the game, you're back to the screen passes and running up the middle with DeAndre Swift. Why are the Bears refusing to change their ways? Because we felt like when Ben Johnson was brought here that the culture would change a little bit. And maybe it was just in the midst of a culture change and it just hasn't been changed yet. But that looked like a lot of the old to me on Monday night.
Yeah, no, it did. It did. Now, I think that I could safely say that the team is more focused and, more into it than they were in years past, but that's only part of the battle. I mean, we saw how energized that team was through much of the game. But then when things went south, we saw a lot of the same old Bears. I mean, I just think that Ben Johnson has a lot of work to reshape a culture. It's not just going to happen overnight. I think they have to live and experience through these failures, and they're going to see how differently Ben Johnson handles this versus what the previous regime did.
Yeah, you would certainly hope that the Bears open up this playbook a little bit more and more every single week as the season goes on, because it's really disheartening to see the same things and the same mistakes that we've been watching for the last 3 years. But like you said, Alex, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I think that Ben Johnson certainly deserves more than one game before Bears fans give their overall assessment.
Absolutely. And you know what? There is something else that stands out is the fact that if you want to look at a positive difference, we bemoan Caleb's accuracy issues. But guess what? The targets were actually open. Go back in years past when it was Luke Getsy or it was Shane Waldron. How often guys were just not open downfield? Ben Johnson got his guys open
Yeah.
against the very good defense.
Yeah, and TJ Prophet says in the comment here, Ben had touchdown plays called that didn't get thrown if you watch the all 22.
Yes, correct.
And then he follows it up with multiple
Correct.
times. And yeah,
Correct.
I
Yes.
it's tough to assess the game when you're sitting in the stands. Obviously, you don't get to see every single play from every single angle, but there was numerous times in that game where I looked over at Sean or Brandon and it's like, hey man, Caleb just missed. He was wide. Loveland's wide open, Vernon's wide open, DJ's wide open. He's just missing him. I don't know if the defense is rushing his timing. He's just not getting through his progressions fast enough. I don't know what's going on. I have to watch the game on film, but just numerous times it looked like Caleb was kind of at fault and Ben Johnson did call the right play. Oh, before we move on to the defense here, and I don't want to keep you for too long, Alex, but what was your overall assessment of the offense, and where do you think they can improve, and do you think they will improve?
Well, so here's the good thing is outside of a few just horrific drives, with all the things that went wrong, they still moved the ball. And for the Bears, that's a big deal. They moved the ball better in a lot of other different situations than they had done in the past. So this offense, listen, you need Caleb to be better for this offense to be noticeably better. And you don't have the run game, I think, to really establish a great run. But I think you could at least make it a functional one if your quarterback plays better, because I think that Ben Johnson is going to scheme these guys open pretty consistently. And I do think you are going to see, because again, it's just one game. You are going to see Colson Loveland be a bigger factor. You are going to see Luther Burden III be a big factor. You're going to see Olamide Zaccheaus be a bigger factor. So, I don't think I could say this is going to be a great offense right now, just based on what I've seen. But I already see more promise of it functioning as a better unit than it did before, which I know is a very low bar. A
Yeah,
very, very low bar.
yeah. I mean, you couldn't have said it better, Alex. I agree with you 100%. We talked all off season about to Bears fans on this chat about staying patient. This is going to take time. There's going to be growing pains, and I think we saw a lot of that on Monday. I think we also saw a lot of good in the Bears game on Monday. Like I said, on the first drive of the game, they looked almost flawless. Those plays are obviously scripted. Once the script was over, it became a little bit more difficult to find points, find yards for the Bears. But I do think this team is going to get better as the weeks go on. I still trusted Ben Johnson. I think he's going to fix these mistakes. And like you said, Alex, eventually talent will shine through. I think he's going to find a way to get the ball in Luther Burden's hands and Colston Loveland's hands. DJ Moore will get better. Roma Dunze will get more uncomfortable in this off. Remember, once again, guys, everybody on the field is learning a new offense, not just Caleb Williams. The entire team is learning. And, we're talking about for Roma Dunze, this is his second year, and this is his, fourth play caller in his first 18 games in the NFL. So I do expect these guys to get more consistent. So, Alex, while we're sitting in the parking lot, we're tailgating, having fun, talking to different fans. The news came in through our phones that both Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon were going to be out. Obviously, we already knew TJ Edwards was going to be out because basically any time the NFL says the word doubtful, that means out.
It means out, yes.
I don't think I've ever seen anybody play after being listed as doubtful. I looked over at Sean and Brennan after we got the news about Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson and said, guys, if the Bears are missing 3 of their best defensive players, I'm changing my pick for the Vikings to win, and I don't think it's going to be very pretty. But for the most part, early on in that game, I mean, through the better part of 3 quarters, the defense looked like they were holding their own, and they looked like they were playing really well. What was your assessment of the defense, and where do you think it all fell apart?
Yeah, I mean, I could start with where it fell apart. I think you got tired after a while, like in many years past, and you were missing some of your key guys, as you alluded to. But boy, I had a lot of doubts about Dayo Odangbo. Had a great game. He played really, really well. And I think that you also really saw some great things from Noah Sewell. He was all over the place. He looked great. Gervon Dexter had a good game. I think you got to give him credit. Obviously, you had the pick 6 by Wright, big play right there. It's hard when you have to be on the field making big plays over and over. I mean, we saw that in the past when defenses get tired, and I think eventually they did. And you know what? Kevin O'Connell, who's a hell of a head coach, he adjusted to their weaknesses, and he was able to exploit them. And it gave them more confidence, and boom, there you go. Now, the one thing that I wanted to mention, and I'm still trying to give him the benefit of the doubt that he will bounce back this year, but Montez Sweat was invisible. That's the one disappointment. Montez Sweat, you didn't even know he was out there. And that's a position where if your name is not getting called, that means you're not, making the big plays, obviously. Now, of course, you could get pressures without showing up in some of the fancier stats. You can make big plays where you're assisting. You're not necessarily getting credit for like half a sack, but you're getting the pressure. And when you get that on the quarterback, it allows the other players on your team that are either blitzing or putting the pressure on to get to the quarterback, and you could get, credited, at least maybe not in the score sheet, but it is part of how you get pressure on a quarterback. But, you didn't really see much from Montez Sweat. There was some pressure there from him, but you want to see him get home because that's what he's paid to do.
Yeah, we've talked about Sweat a lot in the offseason, and Sean and I are under the impression that he's going to be more of the 2023 Montez Sweat, and he's going to make a big impact for this team and be one of the best players. But Monday night was certainly not a good start for him. I do expect him to get better as the season goes on. I think they're kind of all finding their place in this defense. But yeah, for the guy who right now is probably, I think, the first or second highest paid player on the Bears defense, he needs to be an impact player. And over the 2024 injury-riddled season and a Monday night against the Vikings, he just has been, like you said, Alex, non-existent, and that's very disheartening. But yeah, I mean, you talk about some positives out of Monday night's game. Nahshon Wright looks like he's going to be a hell of a backup when Jalen Johnson gets back. He certainly can play the role. I think Noah Sewell will probably end up being a mainstay in this lineup. I think he could actually end up, I think he was playing middle linebacker for most of the game on Monday, which was a little bit surprising. But it does look like some of the depth on this team is starting to turn to fruition. Where do you think this defense's ceiling is when they get guys like TJ Edwards, Kyler Gordon, and Jalen Johnson back?
Yeah, I mean, you have the potential to have a really, really good defense. I mean, I think that the main thing that you're missing is another edge rusher, another, good edge rusher, because I do think if you had better pressure on the other side, it would help make Montez Sweat more productive. It's easier to scheme against him when you don't have that other guy on the other side. But I think a fully healthy defense could be a very good one, because I would say Kyler Gordon is a top 3 nickel in the game, and you're playing 4-3 now. So you have 2 linebackers and a nickel. And if Kyler Gordon is in there, that means he's up closer. And we've seen him make some the way he gets to the ball so quickly is really, really impressive. So him being healthy is going to be key for that being such a successful defense. And, I think when you have Jalen Johnson in there, it's going to have to force the quarterback to go to other options, because your number one option for so much of when Jalen Johnson is out there is locked up.
Dude, what were your impressions, since you brought that up, what were your impressions of Tyreek Stevenson on Monday night?
I mean, I think he's got a lot of talent. I think that there's promises in there from what we've seen. I just think he needs to get that head on straight. But I don't think Matt Eberflus was doing him any favors. It was an enabling type of environment, and you're not going to see that with Ben Johnson. So I'm going to remain optimistic, and basically what we've seen, that he will be a good, solid player.
Yeah, Dustin and I on 4 Stars here have talked a lot about how we think that he's going to get much, much better. And I think this Dennis Allen defense fits him better than Matt Eberflus did, because I think the guy's just got kind of an aggressive personality, and that's the way he plays, and he takes chances. But as long as, I don't think Tyreek Stevenson's ever going to be a shutdown corner like Jalen Johnson. I think he's going to take risks, and he may give up the occasional big play, but I think he will end up being more of a ball hawk than Jalen Johnson, and he will make some big plays for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
So after this game Monday night, the Bears obviously heartbreaking loss to the Minnesota Vikings. They're 0-1 the division. They're 0-1 on this season. They're obviously already in last place in the NFC North. They have a big matchup coming up this Sunday against the Detroit Lions. What do you give us your synopsis or your evaluation, how you think this game's going to go, what the Bears need to do to get better, how they can win this game, can they win this game, and where do you think the Detroit Lions stand after a loss against the Green Bay Packers on week 1?
Well, if you think Dan Campbell is going to let his old friend beat him, you're sorely mistaken. They're going to be pissed off. They're going to want revenge. They're going to be at home. The crowd is going to be behind them. I think this is going to be a real tough game to win. Real tough. Not saying they can't do it, but we saw that there were some holes in the defense for the Lions, and you got to exploit those. They're going to be bringing pressure at Caleb Williams. They're going to try to throw him off his game. They're going to try to prevent him from getting in any sort of rhythm. So they have to be ready for that.
Yeah, we talked about when we did our record predictions that if the Bears go 0-1 against the Vikings, they could be in big trouble and find themselves in a deep hole, because I think they're going to lose this game. I've played this game out a million times in my head, and Alex, I just don't see a way that Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears walk into Detroit and beat a Detroit team that now is 0-1, is pissed off, like you said. They're already mad that Ben Johnson left. We heard guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown on his podcast say that they are absolutely going to boo Ben Johnson when he walks in that stadium, regardless.
Oh God, yeah, it's going to be relentless.
Yeah, it's going to be a hostile environment. I think if you look at the two teams on paper, the Detroit Lions are just head and shoulders clearly the better team than when you compare them with the Chicago Bears. And it's going to be, if the Bears start 0-2, they're going to need to win their next 2 games to make this season relevant in any way, shape, or form. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, they cannot come out 1-3. They absolutely cannot. If the Bears come out 1-3, you guys, I'd say, I don't want to speak too hastily here, but I'd say this season is probably over, because the Bears have an absolute gauntlet of the schedule. And these games, like the Minnesota Vikings, when you're looking at the schedule, these are the games you picked for the Bears to win, to get to that 8 or 9 win mark. Losing this one to the Minnesota Vikings hurts badly. And like you said, Alex, it's another divisional loss against the Minnesota Vikings at home on primetime Monday night against a quarterback who just played his first game ever in the NFL. Could you possibly imagine a worse start for the Chicago Bears than going 0-1 against the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, no, yeah. That's what makes this loss hurt.
Yeah.
It really does.
I told Sean when we were leaving the game, I'm like, man, this one, we've been here a lot. We've seen a lot of heartbreaking losses. We've seen a lot of wins that were crazy and exciting. That this one was soul crushing to me, Alex. It just took the wind out of the Bears' sails and my sails as a Bears fan, because I expected growth and development from this team, and I still do. And it's way too early to make any judgments or assessments, but man, it looks like a lot of the old over and over and over again. Hey, is there any chance, Alex? And if you don't want to, you're not comfortable, I totally understand that. You can give us your score prediction for Sunday Bears Lions game. I know it's tough to do because the injury reports aren't complete yet, and we don't know if Jalen Johnson or Kyler or any of these guys are going to play. But right now, if you had to, what would you say the score is going to be on Sunday?
Oh boy. Okay. I'm going to say, and this won't be the most optimistic prediction, I'm going to say Lions 31, Bears 21.
Yeah, I had that my score prediction right around there. I think that the Lions will win by 10, somewhere around there, 10 or 2-14, somewhere around there. But yeah, I mean, I expect those predictions to change the more we know about the injury report and who's playing, who's not. But yeah, it's just to go into somebody else's house, and this is going to, remember, guys, this is the home opener for the Detroit Lions because they were
Right.
in Green Bay last week. So you have to go into their house, their home opener, playing against your old team and Ben Johnson against the Lions. It's just a very tall task to ask for the Bears to go in there and sneak away with a win. And I know a lot of people have come out and said, "Oh, I watched that Detroit Green Bay game, and Detroit looks like they're going to be the worst teams in the NFL." You guys, Detroit is a very, very talented football roster. At the end of the day, talent always shines through. They find a way, and I think Detroit, once they start to learn their new offensive scheme and their new defensive scheme, I expect them to be a very good team going on into this season. Do you agree, Alex?
Yes, yes. Do I think they'll be as good as last year? No, because they have lost a lot, coordinators and some players, but I'm definitely not going to let week one determine their fate this year. I mean, Green Bay might be one of the best teams in football this year, honestly. And I think that you can look at the Lions and say, okay, um, they will not be invincible. They are not going to probably, I wouldn't think they're going to win 15 games again, but I still think they're going to be very good. You still got a lot of talent.
Yeah. And before you get out of here, Alex, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, once again, I can't tell you, overstate how much I appreciate you joining the show here today. But
Mm-hmm.
where do you think going forward in this season, where do you expect, or where do you think the Bears need to improve the most? And where do you think, what part of the Bears team kind of was a pleasant surprise and there's something maybe you were worried about, but it looks like it's going to be better than you thought?
Well, obviously, I think for me, the improvement is your quarterback. I mean, that's the most important thing. That's where you got to improve. The surprise, I'll say it again. I was surprised how much pressure they were able to get because I still think getting pressure on a quarterback might be a problem. But if Dayo Dangbo plays like he did that first game, then maybe he will shut me up because I really didn't understand that signing. And again, it was only one game, but it was an impressive one. So maybe that does end up being a nice surprise. Time will tell.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's like the two people we really didn't talk much about in the offseason as Bears fans were Noah Sewell and Deo Adebadingo. And those guys, to me, were the shining lights on Monday night. I mean,
Yes.
Noah Sewell certainly looks like he plays the part of a good starting NFL linebacker. The fact that we're seeing this guy in the field for the first time ever just shows you how incompetent Matt Eberflus and that previous coaching staff were. They should have at least been able to find like a rotational role for him at some point. He looks like he's a damn good football player. And like you said, it's only week one, but he looked good in the preseason and training camp as well. And I expect better things from some of these young guys or these new first-time players for the Chicago Bears. Alex, once again, I could not overstate how much I appreciate you joining the show. Obviously, Brandon had to bail out last minute due to some family issues. So we appreciate you being here. So I wasn't just me talking to the chat the entire time. Before you get out of here, can you just once again tell everybody in the chat where they can find you?
Yeah, you could find me Twitter X at ShyFanPat2. You could check me out at cubbiescrib.com, part of the Fansided Network. You could also go to alexanderjpatcreative.com to check out my personal website. It's got all my work and stuff on there.
Yeah, and Alex, I don't know if you saw it or not, but a lot of people in the chat were paying homage to you, saying how great you know your stuff. I can't find the specific chats, but just how much of a pleasure it's been listening to you. And once again, we appreciate you joining the show, and hopefully we could work with you in the future here, man. Some later on down the season somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. I'll definitely be back. I appreciate the hell out of you having me here, and thank you to all the listeners for listening. Obviously, glad you liked some of my opinions, whether they were good or not. Appreciate it, Bruce. Thank you, and everyone else with the compliments. Thank you, Super Bowl Bears 26. Let's hope it's Super Bowl Bears 25, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I appreciate everybody listening. Thanks for the good feedback, and thank you for having me.
yeah, absolute pleasure, Alex. I'll talk to you shortly, man. Thank you so much, brother. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Take care.
You too, man. Yeah, you guys, there's something I want to talk about that I've read a lot of stuff on Instagram, a lot of stuff on Twitter, a lot of stuff. A lot of Bears fans basically jumping ship. We preached all off season here at Four Star Chicago Sports that we knew this was going to take some time, right? We knew that the Chicago Bears were not going to come in week 1 and beat the Minnesota Vikings 45-0. Obviously, the loss is heartbreaking. That's a game the Bears could have and should have won. If you look at the box score, they were the better team on Monday. They just had too many penalties to overcome. A couple mistakes made by Ben Johnson. Caleb Williams obviously wasn't as sharp as we expect him to be or expected him to be going into that game. But I do believe that a lot of the mistakes that the Bears made are things that they can clean up, especially when you're talking about the pre-snap penalties. I know we've been saying this for years now. Oh, they're going to fix it. They're going to get better. They're going to fix it. But I think I have more trust in Ben Johnson than I have in any of the previous coaching staff. And I do believe at some point they're going to get this cleaned up a little bit. Now, what's the Bears ceiling in 2025? Nobody knows. I don't know if this team's going to be a 7-win team or a 10-win team. We don't know. But after watching that game Monday night, it looks like they've got a lot more to clean up than I think we probably thought they were going to have to clean up going into the season. But once again, everybody temper your expectations a little bit. I certainly don't. I've heard people saying Caleb Williams is a bust on social media. I don't think that's the case. I think Caleb Williams is still going to be a good quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Now, the more we watch him play, is that generational type quarterback? Is that getting further and further away? Probably, but he doesn't have to be generational to win a Super Bowl in Chicago. I think the Bears are capable of winning games this season and looking a lot better than they did on Monday night. If you watch the game, it's basically the tale of two halves, right? The Chicago Bears in the first half, or at least the first quarter, looked really good. The defense played well, missing some of their best players. The offense marched down the field on the first drive of the game, scored a touchdown. Caleb Williams' decision making was doing a very good job at it. He ran when he had to, threw the ball when he had to. Obviously, he missed some open throws. That one on fourth down to DJ Moore, in particular, really, really, really hurt this team. But I think as the season goes on, you're going to see him get more comfortable in the scheme, more comfortable in this offense, and you're going to start to see guys like Luther Burden and Colston Loveland and DJ Moore and Roma Dunze come into their own, find their spots in this scheme and this offense, and this team is going to get better. But yeah, all I'm saying to Bears fans out there is please don't jump ship just yet. I think the Bears are going to end up being better than most people expect this season, and I think they're going to get better as the future goes on here with Ben Johnson as the head coach. When it comes to the Detroit Lions game, guys, I like I said, this is the Lions are just years ahead of the Chicago Bears. They're a well-run organization. I think Dan Campbell does a very good job over there with that team. I think the bumps in the road you saw week 1 for the Lions against Green Bay is them more learning a new system on defense, learning a new system on offense. If you look at the talent on the roster, the Lions are a better football team than the Chicago Bears. Like I said, the Chicago Bears are just a year behind. They still have holes on this roster to fill. They knew that going into the season. They knew they weren't a Super Bowl roster. This next offseason, they're still going to have plenty of things to address. Left tackle, defensive end, probably another stud defensive tackle. They probably want to add another corner, another safety. We know that Kevin Byard's going into his last year of his contract, but I would expect the Bears to put up a fight in Detroit, but ultimately I do not think the Chicago Bears can go into Detroit and win that game. I think at the end of the day, Detroit's just a better team. They're more of a veteran team. They have the veteran presence. They've been in the playoffs. They know how that goes. I think that Detroit's probably going to win this game by probably, like I said, 10 points, maybe 2 touchdowns, but I do expect to see less pre-snap penalties from the Chicago Bears. I expect to see more of Luther Burden. I expect to see more of Colston Loveland. I would hope that going into next week, the Bears are planning on using more than one running back in DeAndre Swift and running between the tackles. We know that that's something that DeAndre Swift's not particularly good at. He's better at getting in open space, catching the ball. So I'd expect to see more of Roschon Johnson and Calvin Ungai if Roschon Johnson's healthy, obviously. But I think the Bears are going to get better as the season goes on. You guys, we talked about this in the offseason. there's going to be bumps in the road. We knew there was going to be these 1 weekers who come in here and say, "Oh, the Bears suck. They're the worst team in the NFL. It's all over. Give up. Throw on the white towel." I don't see it. I think this is kind of, I made this comparison 1,000 times on this podcast, guys. This Bears team reminds me a lot of that 2020, I think 2022, 2023, whatever it was, Lions team that started off the season, 1-7, and then won like 8 of their last 9, something along those lines. I think you're going to kind of see that here in Chicago. I think they're all going to become more comfortable with each other the more they play with each other. Obviously, Caleb Williams has to learn the timing of Luther Burden. He has to learn the timing of Colston Loveland, even the timing of the offense with Ben Johnson. He has to learn it. He has to be better under center. He certainly has to be better. His accuracy has to get better, but I think you'll see some more growth in him in year 2. They say that most quarterbacks shouldn't be judged until after they've played 35 games in the NFL. Let's all remember, guys, this was only his 18th game as a professional quarterback in the NFL. I expect it to get better. I think that the Bears will probably put up better fights against teams like Dallas, who are certainly not complete in any way, shape, or form. Better fights against teams like they should still beat teams like New Orleans, but you'd certainly like to see more consistent play out of guys like Caleb Williams for sure. Real quick, I'm gonna do my way too early score prediction
Okay.
for Sunday against the Lions. Here we got breaking news. Bruce on the show, guys.
Yes.
Bruce,
Yeah.
what do you think the Bears Lions score is Sunday?
Be a tough one. I think Bears will bounce back like 27-20.
No, so you got the Bears winning.
Yeah, I think they'll bounce back.
You are the odd man out, Bruce. Because right now, I think everybody in the world has,
I
the
know.
Lions beating the Chicago. I love the optimism, though, Bruce. As always, man, you're always Mr. Faithful.
So,
But yeah, like I said, I think it's going to be a tough fought game. I think the Bears are going to play better than most people think in Detroit. But I think Detroit ultimately will get the win. I'm going to have my score projection to be 26-17 Lions, and obviously, you guys. We'll break down this game more as the week goes on. I think that's going to change if the Bears start to get guys back like Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson and TJ Edwards. I mean, they were missing 3 of their best players on Sunday or Monday, and their defense still looked pretty good, at least through the first 3 quarters. As always, guys, we appreciate you joining the show. It's a little bit shorter show today since Sean and Jason couldn't be here. Those guys are on vacation in Wisconsin, having a good time. So thank you so much for joining us. VDog, Anthropology, Bajent plus Ben equals Dynasty, VDog, James Christo, Breaking News Bruce, Bears fan Spawn, Liz, Romy, Trey, James Christo. Thank you so much for being here today, guys. We appreciate it. If you guys haven't already, we got 25 people watching here live. If you haven't already, if you're watching on Twitter, please go over to our YouTube page, hit that like and subscribe button. We certainly appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And you guys, as always, man, take care of yourselves so you can take care of each other. And we look forward to talking to you guys again. Remember, the bare minimum will be on tomorrow night at 11:30, I believe. Brennan and Dustin will be on there. So if you guys want to go check them out, burn the midnight oil with them, or if you don't get a chance to catch them because they're on so late, listen to them on your way in the work in the morning. Those guys always do a good job there. They're going to break down the Lions game. Probably going to talk a little bit more about this Minnesota Vikings game. But as always, we love you. We appreciate you. And bear down.
Yeah, bear down. Thanks, everybody. Yep. Have a great night.
You want to say night to Dada? Say night to Dada?